You think you know Japan, the neon, the temples, the mountain on every postcard. But everything you have seen is the surface. There is a color in the sea here that exists nowhere else on Earth. Forests stand here, older than the pyramids. A road carves through walls of snow taller than a 6-story building. On 3 mountains, pilgrims walk to die and be born again. In one valley, the earth itself smells of hell. On one island, samurai vanished and were never seen again. None of this is on the postcard. None of this is in the guidebook. This is the Japan that hides in plain sight. Unseen Japan. Hidden wonders, forgotten worlds. The country you have never been shown. Islands out of time. Our journey begins where Japan ends. Not in Tokyo, not in Kyoto, but 1,000 kilometers south, where the country breaks apart into hundreds of islands scattered across the Pacific. Most of them are uninhabited. Some have no name. And one of them is famous around the world for a single thing, a color. "40 kilometers west of Okinawa, scattered across the East China Sea, lie the Kerama Islands, 30 of them, 20 uninhabited. From the air, the first thing you see is not the land, it is the water. A blue so saturated, it does not look real. A blue closer to glass than to liquid. The Japanese have a name for it, Kerama Blue. It is one of the only colors on Earth named after a place, officially recognized. The water here is so clear that visibility regularly reaches 60 meters straight down, clearer than almost any tropical sea on the planet. The reason is rare. There are no rivers on the Kerama Islands. No silt, no runoff. The reefs are fed entirely by open ocean currents, and the water arrives untouched. From above, the contrast is almost violent. Brilliant white sand, reefs in every shade of turquoise. Then a sudden drop into deep ultramarine where the seabed falls away. The colors do not blend, they band. A small boat crossing the channel appears, from the air, to be flying. Beneath it, the sea floor is visible in perfect detail 20 meters down. In winter, something else arrives. Humpback whales travel here from the cold North Pacific to give birth in the warm Kerama channels. From above, you can see them. Long dark shapes gliding beneath the impossible blue. The Kerama Islands were designated a national park in 2014, not for their land, but for the water around them. One of the very few parks in the world created to protect a color, a sea that named itself. From these blue waters, we follow the Ryukyu chain further south, where the sea grows warmer, the forests grow wilder, and the islands begin to vanish into jungle. "90% of Iriomote is jungle. This is the second largest island in Okinawa Prefecture, and yet almost no one lives here. There are no chain stores, no traffic signals, no railways, just a thin road that loops along the coast, and behind it, an emerald wilderness that has barely changed in 1,000 years. From the air, the island looks like a continent in miniature. Rivers cut through dense mangrove forests, winding inland past hidden waterfalls. The Uruchi River, the longest in Okinawa, carves through the jungle like a green vein. Iriomote is home to one of the rarest cats in the world, the Iriomote wildcat. Fewer than 100 remain. They are seen only at night, only by chance, only by those willing to wait. Most visitors never spot one. The cat is not a sight, it is a feeling, a presence in the dark. Down on the southern coast, the jungle finally surrenders to the sea, opening onto reefs so clear that the boats above appear to be floating in the sky. Just across the reef from Iriomote, a single coral island holds a secret of another kind. A water buffalo walks slowly down a white sand street. This is Taketomi, a tiny coral island where Ryukyuan tradition has barely shifted in centuries. Houses sit low and wide, their red-tiled roofs weighted against typhoon winds, their walls built from stacked coral. Every morning, before the heat arrives, residents sweep the sandy paths in front of their homes. Not for tourists, for themselves. It is simply how things have always been done. And then, off the coast of the very last inhabited island of Japan, divers stumbled upon something the world is still arguing about. Off the coast of Yonaguni, 25 meters beneath the surface, divers found something that should not exist. Massive stone steps, sharp right angles, flat terraces, as if carved by hand. Some scientists call it a natural formation. Others insist it is the ruin of a city that sank 10,000 years ago, older than any known civilization. The truth, like the monument itself, remains submerged. No one yet knows what it is. Fire and ancient forest. Further north, the ocean changes color. The water cools, and on the horizon, a darker shape begins to rise. Kyushu, a land carved by fire, draped in mist and older than memory. Mist rolls through a forest where some of the trees were already ancient when the Roman Empire fell. This is Yakushima. A small, almost circular island off the southern coast of Kyushu, Yakushima rises sharply from the sea, its peaks catching every cloud the Pacific can offer. The island receives some of the heaviest rainfall in all of Japan, over 10,000 millimeters in some places each year. Locals say it rains 35 days a month. That endless rain feeds something unlike anywhere else on Earth. The Yakusugi, the ancient cedars of Yakushima, grow only here. To be called a Yakusugi, a tree must be at least 1,000 years old. Many are far older. Deep in the heart of the island, on a high mountain ridge, stands the most famous of them all, Jomon Sugi. Its exact age is debated. The lowest estimates place it at 2,000 years old, the highest at 7,000. This tree may have been alive when the pyramids of Giza were still under construction. Reaching it requires a full-day trek through one of the most haunting forests on Earth. The trail begins on an abandoned logging railway. It climbs through curtains of moss, past streams that flow over stones polished by centuries of footsteps. Moss covers the rocks, moss covers the roots, moss covers the trunks of trees that have already fallen. And from those fallen trees, new trees rise, generations stacked upon generations in a slow vertical embrace. The animator Hayao Miyazaki spent days walking here before drawing the forests of Princess Mononoke. You can see why. This place does not feel designed, it feels remembered. There are no cathedrals in Yakushima. The forest is the cathedral. Light filters down through layers of green like stained glass. Sound is swallowed by the moss. Even your own footsteps become reverent. A few of the oldest cedars have hollows large enough to walk inside. Step into one, and you stand within a living being that has watched the world change for 50, 60, 70 human lifetimes and continues to watch. In 1993, Yakushima became one of Japan's first sites listed as UNESCO World Heritage. But the real heritage here is not on a list. It is in the rings of trees that have outlived emperors, empires, and entire civilizations, and still keep growing. The breathing caldera. Yakushima endures by holding still. Just to the north, the land does the opposite. It moves, it breathes, it explodes, 25 kilometers across. That is the diameter of the Aso caldera, one of the largest in the world. From the air, it looks less like a volcano and more like a colossal bowl scooped out of the earth. Around 90,000 years ago, this volcano produced one of the largest eruptions of the last million years. The blast collapsed the mountain inward, leaving a crater so vast that today, 50,000 people live inside it. There are towns within the caldera. There are highways. There are rice fields, hot springs, and cattle ranches stretching across the floor where once only molten rock existed. And in the center, 5 active cones still breathing. The Nakadake crater is the most restless. It steams continuously. On calm days, visitors can stand at the rim and look down into a turquoise lake of boiling acid. Japan is built upon the fault lines of the world. At Aso, you can see the fault lines breathe. Further east, the fire of Aso gives way to something quieter, but no less mythic. A narrow ribbon of jade green water winds through walls of volcanic rock 17 meters high. A waterfall pours from the top of the cliff straight into the river below. Small wooden rowboats drift through, dwarfed by the basalt columns above them. This is Takachiho Gorge. The cliffs were formed by a pyroclastic flow from Mount Aso, cooled and carved by water over more than 100,000 years. The volcanic rock has fractured into long vertical columns, a natural cathedral of black stone. But in Japan, Takachiho is more than geology. According to Shinto mythology, this is the place where the sun goddess Amaterasu hid herself inside a cave after a quarrel with her brother, plunging the world into total darkness. The other gods gathered outside and danced to draw her back into the light. That dance, the Iwato Kagura, is still performed here every night in a small wooden shrine, just as it has been for over 1,000 years. Mythology runs deep in Kyushu. So does steam. They call them the Hells. Beppu sits on one of the most concentrated geothermal zones on Earth. Over 2,000 vents push steam, boiling water, and mineral-rich mud to the surface. 7 pools are too violent to bathe in. One glows cobalt blue, one simmers blood red. Across the bay from Kagoshima, a black silhouette dominates the horizon, Sakurajima, one of the most active volcanoes in Japan, erupting on average several hundred times a year. Ash falls on the city below like grey snow. Residents simply carry umbrellas, sweep their doorsteps, and keep going. Life beside a volcano, taken as a routine. Secrets of the Inland Sea. While Kyushu thunders and steams, the Seto Inland Sea holds a very different kind of secret. Not fire, but silence. But silence, not eruption, but abandonment. The air is still. Nothing moves quickly here. Off the coast of Nagasaki, a low, dark shape rises from the sea. From a distance, it looks like a warship anchored just offshore. That is why the locals call it Gunkanjima, Battleship Island. Its real name is Hashima. A century ago, this single rocky outcrop, just 16 acres in size, was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. At its peak in 1959, more than 5,000 people lived here, packed together in Japan's first large reinforced concrete apartment buildings, rising 9 stories straight from the sea wall. There was a school, a hospital, a swimming pool, a cinema, a rooftop garden. Children played between laundry lines stretched between buildings, 40 meters above the ocean. Hashima existed for one reason: coal. Beneath the seabed, deep undersea shafts dropped more than 1,000 meters down. Miners descended into the dark to dig the coal that fueled Japan's industrial rise. The work was brutal. During the Second World War, it was made far darker still when forced laborers, including Korean and Chinese workers, were brought here against their will. The mine never stopped. The island never slept. Then, in 1974, Petroleum replaced coal as Japan's primary energy source. The mine closed. The population was given just a few weeks to leave. The last residents walked out of their apartments and never came back. Everything they left behind, chairs, televisions, school desks, photographs on classroom walls, remained exactly where it had been. For the next 40 years, no one was allowed to set foot on the island. From the air today, Hashima looks like a city pulled out of an apocalypse. The apartment blocks still stand, but their windows are gone. The seawall is cracking. Roots have pushed through concrete floors. Stairwells lead into nothing. It is a city that died in a single decade. In 2015, Hashima was inscribed by UNESCO as part of Japan's Meiji-era industrial heritage. Limited boat tours are now allowed, but visitors may only walk a short, fenced path along the southern edge. The interior remains forbidden. From above, the island reveals itself as a fossil, a perfect concrete skeleton of the industrial 20th century, slowly being reclaimed by the sea. A city built on coal, now lost to silence. Beyond the abandoned ruins of Hashima, the inland sea hides a place where humanity not only survived isolation, but turned it into RT. A giant yellow pumpkin sits at the end of a small concrete pier, staring out at the ocean. This is Yakushima, once a forgotten fishing village slowly dying from depopulation. Now, one of the most unusual art destinations on Earth. In the late 1980s, a Japanese publisher began transforming the island into a single sprawling open-air museum. The architect Tadao Ando designed concrete structures embedded directly into the hills. Galleries were built underground, lit by carefully sculpted shafts of natural light. Empty wooden houses, abandoned by their owners, were given to international artists who turned each one into a single permanent installation. What makes it remarkable is the contrast. You walk past a faded Showa-era home, turn a corner, and find a Monet hanging in a vault of polished concrete buried beneath a hill. Art hidden by the landscape and revealed by it. Crossing the inland sea to the largest of its surrounding islands, we enter a different world, a mountainous interior where, for centuries, Japan came to vanish. A bridge made entirely of woven mountain vines stretches across a deep emerald gorge, swaying gently above a river 15 meters below. This is the Iya Valley in the heart of Shikoku, one of the most remote places in mainland Japan. For centuries, the steep valleys here were almost impossible to enter from the outside. That is why, after their defeat in the Great Genpei War of the 12th century, the Heikei samurai clan, on the losing side, fled here to hide. Some accounts say they built the vine bridges themselves, so that, if pursued, they could simply cut the vines and sever the only path in. Today, only 3 of these original bridges remain. They are rebuilt every 3 years from fresh mountain kazura vines, woven by hand. Walking across one is unsettling. The boards beneath your feet are spaced wide apart. The vines creak. The bridge sways with every step. In Iya, even the ground beneath you remembers that some Japans were never meant to be found. Paths of the Gods. What does 1,000 years of walking the same path do to the ground beneath it? In the south of Honshu, a peninsula of mountains, rivers, and pilgrim trails has been answering that question for over a millennium, in stone, in moss, and in the quiet footsteps that have never stopped. A narrow stone path climbs through cedar forest, polished smooth by 1,000 years of footsteps. This is the Kumano Kodo, one of only 2 pilgrimage routes in the world inscribed by UNESCO as World Heritage. The other is the Camino de Santiago in Spain. The Kumano Kodo is older. For more than 1,000 years, emperors, samurai, monks, and ordinary villagers have walked these mountain paths to reach the 3 grand shrines of Kumano. The pilgrimage is so ancient that it predates the formal separation of Japan's 2 great religions, Shinto and Buddhism. On these paths, both faiths flow together, indistinguishable. There is no single starting point. There are several routes. Some begin at the coast, others climb from the highlands. The most famous, the Nakahechi route, weaves 70 kilometers through forested mountains, past tiny villages and small wayside shrines carved with weather-worn deities. In the medieval period, pilgrims walked here believing the key peninsula itself to be a sacred mandala, the spiritual map of paradise rendered in mountains, rivers, and trees. Walking the Kumano Kodo was not merely a journey, it was, in itself, an act of purification. Each step said to wash away the sins of a previous life. From above, the forest is almost unbroken. Cedar and cypress fill every valley. Mist clings to the ridgelines well into mid-morning. Roofs of small inns appear briefly through the trees and then disappear again. The largest shrine on the route, Hongu Taisha, sits in a quiet valley deep within the mountains. Its original location, slightly downstream beside the Kumano River, was destroyed by a flood in 1889. Today, where the original shrine once stood, the largest torii gate in Japan rises out of an open meadow. Almost 34 meters tall, made of weathered steel painted black. It is the only torii in the world that marks not what is here, but what was here. Walk through it, and you pass under one of the largest spiritual thresholds ever built, and step onto an empty field of grass. The shrine, the gods, the ceremonies, all moved up the hill. But the threshold remained. That is what the Kumano Kodo is, in the end. Not a destination, but a series of thresholds, between one mountain and the next, between forest and clearing, between the world we live in and the world we cannot see. At one of those thresholds, high on a mountaintop further north, Japan has built the most sacred Buddhist site in the country. 200,000 graves. That is what waits beneath the cedars at Okunoin, the great cemetery on Mount Koya, the spiritual center of Shingon Buddhism. The monk Kukai founded this temple complex over 1,200 years ago, in the year 819. According to belief, he did not die. He entered eternal meditation in a small enclosed mausoleum at the heart of the cemetery. And there, he remains. For more than 1,000 years, monks have brought him 2 meals a day, every day, without exception. The path leading to his mausoleum runs for 2 kilometers beneath towering cedar trees, lined with the gravestones, memorials, and stone pagodas of warriors, monks, poets, samurai lords, and ordinary families who all chose this single mountain as their resting place. Some of the tombs are over 8 centuries old. At night, the path is lit by stone lanterns. Mist drifts between the cedars. The only sound is the quiet crunch of footsteps on gravel, and, occasionally, the distant chant of monks returning from prayer. From above, the cemetery is a dark green carpet across a high mountain plateau, its scale invisible from the road, revealed only from the sky. Further south, deep in Kumano's heart, the forest finally breaks open. A single column of white water plunges 133 meters down a black cliff face. Beside it, the bright red 3-tiered pagoda of Shigantoji glows against the green mountain. This is Nachi Falls, the tallest single-drop waterfall in Japan. The waterfall itself is the deity. Long before any temple was built here, ancient Japanese believed the falls were the home of a god. The shrine and pagoda were built later beside the falls in respect, never in competition. From the air, the layered greens of the mountain, the flash of red architecture, and the brilliant white line of falling water compose what many consider the single most photographed view in spiritual Japan. A god still falling. Roof of Japan. "3,000 meters. That is the altitude at which Japan ceases to be a country of temples and begins to be a country of stone. From spirit to scale, from silent forests to towering peaks. This is the roof of Japan. "17 meters. That is the height of a 6-story apartment building. That is the height, in places, of the walls of snow that flank a single mountain road every spring. This is the Yuki no Otani, the snow corridor of the Tateyama-Kurobi Alpine route, and it is, for a few short weeks each year, the most extraordinary road in Japan. The Tateyama Range, rising over 3,000 meters above the Sea of Japan, receives some of the heaviest snowfall in the world. Cold winds blowing inland from Siberia collide with the warmer, wetter air rising off the sea, then dump their entire moisture load against these mountains. By the deepest part of winter, the route is buried under more than 20 meters of snow. In early spring, plows arrive, but they cannot push the snow aside. There is nowhere for it to go. Instead, GPS-guided machines cut directly down through the snowpack, slicing a single road through a frozen ocean. The result is the world's deepest road tunnel through snow that has no roof. Buses drive along the bottom of this gleaming white canyon, dwarfed by walls of compressed ice and snow so deep that the marks of every weekly snowstorm of the previous winter are visible as horizontal stripes. A kind of climate calendar carved into the mountain. From above, the road is a thin grey line through an unbroken white plateau. From the ground, it is a slot canyon of ice. Step out of the bus and the temperature drops. The walls reflect the high alpine sunlight in shifting shades of blue, white, and pale turquoise. Touch the snow, and it is so packed it feels like stone. A small handprint pressed into the wall does not. The route was never originally built for tourists. It was constructed for one of the most ambitious engineering projects of post-war Japan. One of the tallest dams in the country, hidden deep in the surrounding mountains. The road and tunnels were carved through the range to support that single project. When it was finished, the route was opened to the public. It is now a journey through nearly every form of frozen water Japan can produce. Cable cars climb above the mountainside. Trolleybuses pass through tunnels bored straight through volcanic peaks. Ropeways glide across forests still bowed under late-season snow. And at the highest point, the snow canyon waits. This road exists only briefly. By July, the walls have shrunk to a few meters. By August, the corridor is gone. By October, the route closes entirely. The mountains take it back. The mountain does not yield easily. Each year, it must be carved open again, with diesel engines, blades, and patience, before the road allows passage. And each year, the snow returns. The Alps astonish with scale, but just to the west, the same mountains hide something gentler and almost equally rare. In a remote mountain valley, dozens of steeply pitched thatched roofs rise from the snow like dark tents in a sea of white. This is Shirakawa-go, one of the last surviving traditional mountain villages of central Japan. Its houses are built in the Gasho-zukuri style, literally hands in prayer. The roofs slope at 60-degree angles, mimicking palms pressed together. The design is not decorative, it is functional. This valley receives some of the heaviest snowfall in the country. The steep roofs allow the snow to slide off rather than collapse the buildings beneath. Some of these houses are over 250 years old. None of them use a single nail. The wooden beams are tied together with rope, allowing the structure to flex with the snow and the wind. In winter, the village transforms. The houses are blanketed in snow. On certain evenings, they are gently illuminated from below, a constellation of small glowing pyramids scattered through a frozen valley. Shirakawa-go survives because the people here chose, against everything, to keep the old roofs on. East from Shirakawa, the mountains rise again and reach their highest, quietest cathedral. There is no traffic in Kamikochi. There never will be. This high mountain valley in the Northern Alps is closed to private cars all year. To enter, you must take a bus through long mountain tunnels, emerging on the floor of a glacial valley where the Azusa River flows so clear it appears to be made of glass. 3,000-meter peaks rise on every side. Hotaka, Yakedake. The long ridge of the Japanese Alps unfolding north and south. In autumn, the larch forests turn gold. In summer, mist drifts at knee-height across cold rivers. In late spring, the snow at the highest peaks still glows against deep green. A simple wooden footbridge crosses the river at Kappabashi. Beyond it, hiking trails climb into the surrounding wilderness. The Japanese consider Kamikochi the most beautiful high valley in the country. The British missionary Walter Weston, who first popularized mountaineering here in the late 1800s, called it Japan's natural cathedral. From the peaks of the Alps, we cross westward to the coast, to a peninsula where Japan's oldest way of living still meets the sea. On the western coast of Honshu, a narrow finger of land curves north into the Sea of Japan, the Noto Peninsula. This is one of the last great stretches of rural Japan still living as it has for centuries. In 2011, UNESCO recognized the entire region as a globally important agricultural heritage system, a Satoyama landscape, where forest, farmland, sea, and village exist in balance. On the northern coast, that balance becomes visible from the air. Senmaida, the 1,000 rice paddies, descends in over 1,000 narrow steps from the hillside straight down to the ocean. Each terrace is small enough to be tilled by hand. Together, they form one of the oldest continuously farmed landscapes in Japan. At sunset, the seawater fills each terrace with a different color. The hillside becomes a mirror of the sky. In the small town of Wajima, the morning market still opens at dawn, as it has for over 1,000 years. In January 2024, a powerful earthquake struck the peninsula. Roads were broken, many of the old houses fell, and yet the people stayed. The rice terraces, the markets, the lacquer workshops, they began slowly to rebuild. Some traditions survive because they are protected. Others survive because nothing else has ever been considered. Further south down the same coast, the same sea has carved something far less gentle. Sheer columns of basalt rise 25 meters straight out of the crashing sea of Japan. The hexagonal pillars stretch along the coast for over a kilometer. This particular type of cliff is found in only 3 places on Earth. Tojinbo is the largest of the 3. Waves explode against the rock, throwing white spray high enough to fall on visitors standing at the top. Northern shadows. Half of Japan goes unseen, not because it is hidden, but because most travelers stop before they reach it. North of the Alps, the country opens into a quiet, snow-covered second self. This is Tohoku. A land where the mountains are sacred, the snow lasts half the year, and the people have always lived a little closer to the spirits than to the cities. In the mountains of Yamagata Prefecture, 3 peaks rise in a sacred line: Haguro, Gasan, and Yudono. Together, they are known as Dewa Sanzan, the 3 mountains of Dewa. For more than 1,400 years, pilgrims have walked between them. But this is not an ordinary pilgrimage. In the spiritual tradition of Shugendo, a faith that fuses Shinto, Buddhism, and ancient mountain worship, each of the 3 peaks represents a stage of human existence. Haguro is the mountain of the present, the mountain of life as it is lived right now. Gasan, higher and harder to reach, is the mountain of the past, of death and of those who have gone before. Yudono, the most sacred of the three, is the mountain of the future, the mountain of rebirth. To walk all three in order is to symbolically die and be born again. For centuries, that is exactly what Japanese pilgrims came here to do. The journey begins at the base of Mount Haguro, where one of the most beautiful pagodas in Japan stands hidden in the forest. The Goju Noto, a 5-story wooden pagoda over 1,000 years old, untouched by paint or lacquer. Around it rise cedars over 1,000 years old. From the air, the pagoda is almost invisible, a dark roof in a sea of trees. From the ground, it appears suddenly between two trunks, as if it had grown out of the forest itself. From the pagoda, a stone staircase climbs through the cedars to the summit of Haguro. 2,400 stone steps, carved by hand 4 centuries ago. The keepers of Dewa Sanzan are the Yamabushi, the mountain ascetics. They wear white robes. They carry conch shells that they sound across the valleys to mark prayer. Some still spend weeks alone in the mountains, fasting, meditating, walking under waterfalls in the dead of winter. For a long time, the practice was considered dying out. Today, a small but growing number of younger Japanese have begun training as Yamabushi again, drawn back in an age of cities and screens to a tradition that requires no internet, no electricity, and no words. To climb Haguro at dawn is to walk inside something older than Japan as we now know it. And at the end of the ascent, the cedar forest opens onto a single quiet shrine and a view across the entire range where the pilgrim, in theory, has just been reborn. From sacred mountains to a hidden village in the snow, a narrow river flows down the center of a small mountain street. On either side, 3- and 4-story wooden inns lean toward one another, lit by gas lamps that turn the falling snow gold. This is Ginzan Onsen. The name means Silver Mountain Hot Spring, a reminder of the silver mine that once supported the village in the 17th century. When the mine closed, the village survived by reinventing itself around its natural hot springs. The buildings here are mostly from the Taisho and early Showa periods, the 1910s through the 1930s, and have been preserved almost unchanged. Most are still working inns. In the evening, guests in cotton yukata walk between bathhouses in the snow. Gaiter sandals click softly on stone. There are few places in Japan that look more like a film set, but Ginzan is not a set. It is simply a village that decided not to change. Not far from Ginzan, the same heavy winter snowfall that buries the inn roofs creates something even stranger. The Japanese call them juhyo, ice trees. In English, the name is more dramatic, the snow monsters of Zao. High on the slopes of Mount Zao in Yamagata Prefecture, conifer trees freeze every winter into massive twisting figures. Wind-driven mist from Siberia coats the trees in layer after layer of ice. Snow piles on top, then more mist, then more ice, then more snow. By midwinter, The trees no longer look like trees at all. They appear as a vast army of hooded figures frozen in place across the mountain, as if a silent procession was caught and held mid-stride. From above, the slope looks alien. Thousands of pale white shapes lean in the same direction the wind has pushed them. At night, when the mountain is lit, the entire frozen forest glows. Each spring, the monsters quietly disappear. A small wooden temple clings to a vertical cliff face high above the forests of northern Honshu. This is Yamadera, literally mountain temple. To reach it, you must climb over 1,000 stone steps cut into the cliff. The poet Basho stopped here in 1689 and wrote one of his most famous lines, listening to cicadas singing through the stones. The northern edge beyond Honshu, across the cold Tsugaru Strait, lies the last great frontier of Japan. Hokkaido, wilder, emptier, closer to Russia than to Tokyo. The Japanese name says it directly, Jigokudani, Hell Valley. In southwestern Hokkaido, a wide volcanic crater opens in the middle of dense forest. From the rim, a trail descends into a landscape that seems to belong to a different world. Yellow earth, streaks of red and grey, steam rising from 100 vents, hot springs bubbling out of cracks in the rock. The air smells of sulfur. The ground is warm beneath your feet. Jigokudani is the source of the hot springs that have made Noboribetsu one of the most famous onsen towns in Japan. 10,000 tons of mineral-rich water rise from this crater every day, feeding the bathhouses below. 11 different types of hot spring water emerge here, from sulfur springs to iron springs, to springs so acidic they were once used to bleach cloth. From above, the valley looks exactly like what its name promises. A scar in the green forest, steam drifting upward in slow columns. No vegetation, no softness, only mineral and heat. Wooden walkways have been built across the crater floor, allowing visitors to walk directly over the steaming earth. In winter, snow falls on the surrounding forest, but cannot settle on Jigokudani itself. The heat from below melts it the moment it touches the ground. A hell that gives life to a town, a wound in the earth that became its gift. From the warmth of Jigokudani, the journey now turns northeast toward a far colder corner of the island where Japan finally runs out of road. In the language of the Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido, Shiretoko means the end of the earth. It is a fitting name. The Shiretoko Peninsula juts 70 kilometers out into the Sea of Okhotsk in the far northeast of Hokkaido. There are no continuous roads along its length. Much of it is reachable only by boat or by long hike. Bears outnumber visitors. Only by boat or by long hike. Bears outnumber visitors. In summer, dense green forests cover the spine of the peninsula. Waterfalls drop directly off cliffs into the cold ocean. Brown bears walk along the shoreline at low tide, fishing for salmon. But it is in winter that Shirtoko becomes something the rest of Japan cannot offer. Every January and February, drift ice begins to arrive, pushed south by Arctic winds all the way from the Russian coast. The sea fills with thousands of jagged white plates of frozen ocean. It is also the lowest latitude habitat of the Steller's sea eagle, one of the largest birds of prey on Earth, with a wingspan of almost 2.5 meters. They perch directly on the drifting ice, watching the water for fish. In 2005, Shirtoko was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized as one of the most ecologically intact temperate ecosystems remaining anywhere on the planet. The end of the Earth, in midwinter, frozen and full of eagles. South of Shirtoko, the wilderness continues, but turns gentler. In eastern Hokkaido, the largest wetland in Japan stretches across a low coastal plain, 28,000 hectares of marsh, river, and reed. Kushiro Shitsugen is so flat, so vast, that from the air, the rivers within it appear to be drawn rather than flowing. The Kushiro River, the largest, meanders in long curling loops through a landscape that has barely been touched. For decades, this wetland was considered too wet to farm, too remote to develop. That neglect saved it. It is also the last great stronghold of one of the most cherished birds in Japan, the tancho, the red-crowned crane. In the early 20th century, the crane was believed to be extinct. The species had vanished from every Japanese record for decades. Then, in 1924, a small population of around 20 birds was found surviving secretly in these marshes. A century of careful conservation followed. Today, more than 1,800 cranes live here. In winter, the marsh freezes. Snow covers the reeds, and on certain mornings, in pairs, the cranes begin to dance, white wings spread wide, heads thrown back, a courtship ritual that has not changed in millions of years. In Japanese mythology, the crane lives for 1,000 years. In Kushiro, it almost did not live another day. Further inland, two final secrets wait in the snow. It should not be this blue. Near the town of Biei in central Hokkaido, a small forest pond glows in a color that seems to belong to another planet, somewhere between cobalt, turquoise, and aluminum. Bare white trunks of dead larch trees rise straight from the water. The strange color is caused by a natural reaction between mountain runoff and dissolved aluminum hydroxide from a nearby hot spring. It is one of the clearest lakes on Earth. In some years, divers can see down through nearly 40 meters of perfectly transparent water. Lake Mashu fills a steep volcanic caldera in eastern Hokkaido. It has no rivers flowing in. It has no rivers flowing out. The Ainu called it the Lake of the Gods. They believed mortals should not look directly into it. The mist that covers Mashu for most of the year still seems to protect it from being seen at all. You thought you knew Japan, the neon, the temples, the mountain on every postcard. But that was only the surface. Beyond it lies a country of villages inside volcanoes, of forests older than nations, of paths walked for 1,000 years in the company of unseen gods, of mountains where pilgrims walk to die and be born again, of seas frozen at the wrong latitude, of cities reclaimed by silence, of bridges woven from vines and walls woven from snow, of seas with a color named after themselves. From the coral villages of the deep south to the drift ice of the far north, from cedar groves that remember the pyramids to roads that exist for only a few weeks a year, this is the Japan that hides in plain sight. It is everywhere. It is right beside the famous places. It is waiting in the next valley over. If you are willing to look past the postcard, the country has barely begun to show you what it is. Discover the world. Explore the extraordinary. See you in the next adventure.